Okay, the other day I'm going online and I see this particular picture here, and all it is a picture. It doesn't say anything about it. And it says, "Does anybody know what this might be?" Now, immediately I thought it was a puffer ring, and this is what puffers do. Puffer fish, they make these rings when they do their courting and so forth. Now, so I go to respond, and then I realize this thing is 25 miles across. Now we're in a whole different ballgame, and as soon as I realized the size of it, somebody else posted maybe that could be Atlantis. It was a girl named Loretta Barry, I think was her name, and I thought, wow, that's intuitive. Maybe it is. So I thought, if it was Atlantis, certainly someone would know about this. So I started searching on Atlantis and Sahara. Sure enough, there's about 1 million people talking about it. And I'm thinking, well, obviously it's, and of course they had all kind of geological excuses for what it is, and they just disregarded it, which is what they always do. And they went to their Minoan and Crete and all this stuff, which was only 3,500 years ago, 5,000 tops. And this particular event, Plato says, was 11,400 years ago. So I'm going to start with there. Now I'm going to show you the exact evidence why I say this is Atlantis. Now, currently, the theory is it's Santorini or Crete, and it was a Minoan culture, and it was only 5,000 years ago, and it wasn't where it was supposed to be on the other side of the straits. And I mean, there's nothing there that says what Plato says. Absolutely nothing. They say they took this from Plato, but I can't even imagine they read Plato. First of all, it wasn't a volcano; it was an earthquake, very clear. Secondly, it wasn't ash and so forth, it was mud. Plato says it was the most sediments that have ever flowed on the face of the earth. Thirdly, total different time frame, not even close. Half of the history of the world, of the human race, is missing. The architecture was certainly nothing like it was in Atlantis, where they had the walls were plated with brass and tin and another metal that was... Anyway, I have all the documents to go over, and I'm going to show you clearly right down to the details of where all the little details on the island were and all that business. And the history of how these people escaped out of here, because it was a catastrophe they didn't plan on. It caught them unaware, and some of them headed to South America, the longheads. This was the long-headed society. This was the original god society that stayed preserved because it was offshore on its own little island, and the other god-like people became assimilated, and they became normal people as they took on the genes of the primitives. So now, here you have a colony of sophisticates, a country of sophisticates, dealing with childlike people. And a guy named Manly Hall had this theory in 1990. He died, but he had this theory years and years and years ago, that there was two separate cultures. And I've studied it, and he's right. I absolutely can agree with this. One culture is indigenous. It comes from the land. It learns survival. It learns, childlike behaviors. Just everything has to be tended to and so forth. And these other people were sophisticates. They were polished in every way. And that is exactly what the Ethiopians say. They came out of the mud as refugees and strangers from the west to Ethiopia, out of the mud, polished in every form, culture, language, everything. And then they set them up in Egypt as, of course they assimilated for a while with them and became brothers and so forth. And then they set them up in Egypt as the Pharaohs. Now, that was in like 5,000 years ago, in that area. And then they were dominant over the primitives that were in that area, the people that were childlike and sort of in awe of these gods. And then as that deteriorated and they started saying these guys are nothing but just long-headed people pushing us around, they went offshore into Crete and Santorini and hid out like they were Atlantis before and tried to go there, but the Greeks did not like that and wiped them out. So now I'm going to go into the perfect evidence here. But Santorini, Crete, absolutely not. Wrong side of the pillars of anything, straits of anything, wrong time frame, no mudslides. It was a volcano instead of an earthquake. There's not one thing correct that Plato says that they took from Plato. It's not a totally different circumstance, 100%. So I'm going to go into my evidence. All right, this is on one of the rings of what I'm calling Atlantis, and there's a structure here of something that's obviously not natural, and it is from this point to this point 606 or 607 feet wide. And Plato mentions that everywhere in here, everything is measured in stadia. A stadia is 606 feet wide. And that's exactly what this is. I don't know what this structure is. I have no clue. And there are things all over this thing that are not accounted for. Like this. A cut going in and a bridge going over the top, and they are all over the place. A lot of them are very, very tiny. This was a good sized passage. Anyway, there's a ton of stuff. Now the other thing is that this whole place was built with breccia. And breccia is crushed stone. It was siliconized breccia. It's like silicates. And it's all crushed up, and that is leftovers from gold processing. Now, I said, and I said before that it was like 588 miles or something. I just accidentally said that. It's 5.8 miles from here. Like measure the distance from here into this ring in here somewhere, right about there. It's like 6 miles, 5.8 miles from this ring into that ring, 5.88 miles, and it's exactly the same. And the whole distance from side to side is the same, the distance between the rings, the planes. Anyway, I have a lot more detail on this coming up. And one more thing that I forgot to mention was that these people were extremely warlike. Plato mentions that they were warlike people, and I believe that they went out. And warlike means they're dominant, they're oppressive, they're aggressive, they're probably, arrogant and all that business, and they're going to take things for themselves. And I think they went around and beat up on the primitives. They were sophisticates, they had all this special stuff, and they pretended they were gods and took over and had people worship them until they finally got upset, and then they were gone. So anyway, I got the evidence coming up. Thank you. Okay, here's the eye of the Sahara. Now, this from here to here is 36 miles. Now, Plato claimed that across the eye was about 25 miles. And all of the rings, everything lines up. And I'll show you that in a minute. But this is from here to here is 36 miles across. Now, our Grand Canyon is maximum width is 18 miles. So this is twice as wide. And over here, you see the depth here? That's going to be miles and miles deep, this cut. And if you follow up here, and we go up in this direction, this is where the water came in. Now, I'm saying that this is where it fell off into the deep water, into the ocean where Atlantis was sitting until it collapsed. Now, so this is like the shallows, and woof, it came into the deep water. Now, where did it come from? It came from this trench here. Now, this gets a little pixelated, but we're going to be able to see it. It's coming up in a second here. And here it is. You see this? This was the inlet from the Sahara Ocean. And this right here is the straits. Right there is the straits. Alright. Now, this is the crack of the bowl. It appears to have cracked right at the straits. And this appears, you know, this is my take, I could be totally wrong. But this is not a short distance here. From here to here, it's 628 feet. Alright, so that's a pretty good distance. Now, it appears to me that this is where it entered. Now, as you come down, you can see it's quite apparent. It looks like they cut this groove. I mean, I know the water would erode it in such a way, but as it came down here, it eroded and cascaded down into the deeper ocean, it looks like to me. And as it got down into here, it started to settle and tear away all of this. And Plato says it was the most amount of sediment, no other amount of sediment is even worth talking about. And, you know, just think of how much we're talking about here. This is unbelievable. And the reason that this collapsed, what Plato said, was they were mining under the city here. Now, there's other structures here that are very interesting, too. There's little round things here and there. You know, what they were, I don't know. But there are something going on here. Anyway, the whole thing is very interesting, but it appears that if you look at it, it's quite obvious that this was the ocean, and it flowed right out here this way, drained it, turned into a grassland. 5,000 years it was a grassland, but these guys escaped out of here, and they escaped over to Ethiopia, which is over here in the highlands. And then the Ethiopians helped them. They said these guys came out of the mud and they were refugees and strangers from the west, and they helped them out to settle up here in Egypt and take over as the rulers and the Pharaohs. And then when unrest and that was about 5,000 years ago, and then as unrest settled into that country, they went offshore up into the up in this area, Crete and so forth, and but the Greeks didn't like that, and they killed them, I guess. That was the story. Now, that's the way it looks to me. Now, I'm going to go in deep into this, because you can see it's exactly, and I don't mean close, I mean exactly what Plato said. Identical. Now, first of all, he said that these rings were coated with metals. The outside ring was coated with brass, then tin, and then another metal called oroloquium or something like that. It's all the platinum group except gold, basically. Now, look at this color. The metals leach colors. These are different colors than the rest of the thing. So I'm talking possibly metals. Maybe, maybe not. It's just speculation. But check this out. The distance across here is exactly what it's supposed to be. The distance between here and the inside ring was like 500 and something. It's 590 miles. He says it's 588. I mean, it's pretty close. And then you go, I mean, it's exactly identical to what he says. Now, of the rings, the size of the rings, I won't go into that, but I will in a very, very detailed video. But look at this. It talks about on the side closest to the ocean, which is here, there was the fairest of plains. Now, this is towards the ocean. Now, what would you need going towards the ocean? There's no way to get into this thing except, oh, wait, look at there. There's a little cut there. Well, if I had a cut coming in from the ocean, I'd probably want a bridge over the top of it. Oh, look at that. There's a bridge there, too. Why has nobody seen this? This is unbelievable. Now, they would enter this way. And these are not, again, these are not little tiny structures. That's hundreds of feet across. And there was a road going across there. Right? I mean, it sure looks like it to me. Now, at that point, you would enter into this area, and that's a whole nother area. Now, there were all these little places here and there, they said, where they kept their boats. And they're all there. And there's all kinds of things. There's structures in here that nobody's ever looked at, apparently. With this new technology, this is amazing. When you get down in here, I have to find it, but there are structures here that are just unaccounted for. They're little posts and things. Anyway, they're all over the place if you know where to look, and you need to spend a lot of time looking. But it's very, very incredible what you can find on these things. Now, so anyway, the highland is here, the plain is here, the cut is here, the roads are here, the color is here, the size is here, the depth is here. Exactly everything that Plato says corresponds to this. So I'm saying this is Atlantis. And we know that Santorini, none of the other things fit at all, even close, but they accept that. Now why? How does this happen? But it's accepted. And I see this in every place in science. I have DNA and specimens and CAT scans of giant human beings. This is 100% certain, and it not even will be looked at, and I am not even responded to by academics. Once they have an idea what they want, that's what they're staying with. So anyway, this is what we got. I say this is Atlantis. All right? Thank you.